So welcome to Bald Spot Garage. Today we're going to be taking a look at my English wheel. So this is a first design Harbor Freight one, so it was bought really cheap. I think I got it on a coupon sale for like $2.79 or something like that, but about 12, 15 years ago. And it has been modified a little bit, and we'll talk about these modifications more at the end of the video. But don't let all the scratches here fool you. This thing hasn't been used very heavily at all. Most of these scratches and stuff are just from pushing it in the back corner of the garage and stacking a bunch of crap around it. Because unfortunately, I did not get into nearly as much metal work as I really wanted to get into. And I let kind of life get in the way and customer cars, working more mechanical work and much less metal work than I wanted to. But now I'm wanting to prioritize the metal work and a little bit more than I used to. So Harbor Freight has now discontinued these completely out of their catalog, as well as some of the other places like Northern Tools. They no longer show them on their website either, but they were basically the same exact thing. You can tell the very first series because it is curved here, and it uses just 2/4 inch bar stock down here to hold this top wheel. And initially they gave you this bracket with all 7 lower dies when they first brought them out. Now the second design, instead of curving this, it was welded with a 45 here and a 45 there. And then it had a bolt-on carriage assembly here that was cast and was actually a much better design because you could actually do a lot more with adjusting it and getting the tracking of this, getting it perfectly level and parallel and straight with the lower dies. So it was a little bit better design. And they also changed the lower carrier for the die here from this useless design to a completely different useless design. So the whole reason I decided to even make this video is because I was actually online looking around at forums and other videos and stuff to see how I could maybe modify this lower carrier here to see how other people have done it, so I'm not just reinventing the wheel here. And while I was looking up that, I kept finding a bunch of information about people talking about runout in these wheels. And that you want the runout to be no more than, say, about 2 thousandths if you really want the wheel to work properly and be consistent. And sometimes these can be a lot worse than that. So I decided, let's check mine, see how bad it actually is. So I'm going to go ahead and set up a dial gauge here, and we're going to check what this actually measures. So now I got my dial indicator mounted on here, got it set to 0 right in the center of the wheel here. Let's see what kind of numbers we get. So we're looking at right about 9 to 10 thousandths of runout. Not what we want to see. Let me go ahead and move it to the outside here and see what it looks like here. Once again, probably a little bit more like 11 thousandths total, 10, 11 thousandths. So the other thing I see people talk about is this way, doing the side, how much it moves this way. So let me move this and we'll get it on the side here and see what that looks like. So if we got a lot of variance in this measurement, it could be that the lathe that they actually turned them on had a lot of run out, which is causing the problem to start with. I'm not sure how much that the wobble this way makes, how much of a difference that actually makes, but we will see what we got going on here. Well, 19 down to Oh, geez. That's almost 30 thousandths run out on this side. So yeah, we're going to have to address that here. Let me get this top one out of the way and we'll take a look at what the bottom one is like. So this is the middle crown die. Let's see how bad this one actually is. Well, we're looking about 15 thousandths. So yeah, that's not very good either. So I'm gonna go ahead and check all the rest of them and see what those look like off camera, and we'll come back. So in checking all of the lower dies, I was between 3 and 15 thousandths run out. So yeah, if you actually take the amount of run out in the top die and the amount of run out some of these lower dies have, you start wheeling this thing, you're gonna get a lot of varying pressures because you're looking at, you know, a total difference of, you know, what, between 15 and 30 thousandths difference. And when you're rolling sheet that's only 30 or 40 thousandths to start with, that's a big difference. So that might be part of the reason why I struggled early on learning how to use this machine. So now I need to figure out how to actually dress these things up, get them all trued up, and then while I true them up, we're actually going to go ahead and polish the surface to a finer finish as well. Now, I do know a couple people with some small benchtop lathes, and I'm pretty sure we can do these lower dies as long as the jaws will get in here and hold on to the inside here. I took this bearing out so we can see what we had for bearings, because a few of these bearings are not looking all that good, even though it hasn't been used that much. And I wanted to see what I can find for replacements. So if I can get one of those lathes here and can figure out how to actually chuck these things up in the lathe and clean them up along with the top one, which that's probably going to be the hardest one on those small lathes just because of the size of it. I may go ahead and do a video on all that stuff. If you want to see it, let me know in the comments below. So once I get these things all cleaned up and trued and get this thing dialed in where it's actually working good, then I can actually start working with it and learning how to use it properly for once. Because I do have several projects we got coming up here. We got one that's a rat rod for a friend of mine that we may be starting on here really soon that we might need to use the English wheel and some of the parts for. But I've also got this project behind us here that is waiting for fender flares. There's other work that needs to be done to it before we get there, but I don't want to compromise on this car and kind of half-ass the flares together. I want to learn how to use this properly and do a really nice job on the flares for that thing when the time comes. But I've also got another project sitting up at the house at in my garage up there, where it's a coupe that I'm turning into a fastback. And I've got most of the infrastructure done, and I'm about to that point where I need to start putting skin on it, and I can't do that without the English wheel, and I need to know how to use it, because that car is all compound curves. There's no flat panels. So now let's talk about the modifications that I made to this. Now, a friend of mine that I used to work with at a fabrication shop where we did a lot of material handling equipment like grain elevators, belt conveyors, and grain cleaners, things like that. He had one of these as well. So we modified both of them together and made all the parts. He worked on some of it and I worked on some of it. And we used stuff that was just laying around the shop. We didn't go buy anything for it specifically. So one of the things we tried to do was address the fact that these things are a bit flexible. They'll flex a bit too much this way and actually this way as well. We made this spine here for it. Now this is not the best thing, most solid thing, but it does help some. And if I stitched it on there, it'd be a little bit better. But I never stitch welded it on because I figured as I learned how to use this thing, that this may actually not be strong enough. And I don't think it is, because it doesn't do nearly enough for moving this way. This thing will still move a little too much this way, even though it does help. So later on, we'll probably go ahead and do more modifications to make this a bit stronger than it currently is. But also, we added this kick wheel to the bottom here. And this was just a piece of scrap that came off of the plasma table we used to have. That was then these bars are welded to, and then we made some shafting, because we always had shafting around, with some collars, and welded it all on here and got it set up. But then this bracket here is actually an old part from a grain cleaner, which we used to make. And at the time we made it, there just wasn't a whole lot of call for this particular part anymore. Now the company's no longer around, and even when we cleaned the place up, and there was still a bunch of these around that got scrapped. But then we added this bracket here to be able to put the planishing hammer on. And then I made these brackets here to put the dies into here. And I ended up buying an extra die here for this one. Then I took this one, put it in a lathe, and flattened it out completely. Now you might say, well, with the planishing hammer, why would you want a flat die? Well, if you're making a flange that's curved that you need to stretch the edge of, instead of hammering it or putting it in the shrinker stretcher back there and marking up the edges, you can run it through here, stretch it, and keep the surface finish pretty nice.